Welcome back to the NFL Players Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Miller. So this week we're going to dive into private investments. This is an area that athletes constantly get taken advantage of. It's sad to see because they get exploited. I've seen plenty of guys I've played with, myself personally. Private investments is an area that there's just less regulation. There's not as much oversight of this area, so it's constantly an area where athletes get defrauded, and it's not good. And so you really need to understand when someone pitches you a private investment, how should you look at it? Does it even make sense for you? Should you even invest in any private investments? So we're going to do this whole series over the next few weeks, and we're going to go into venture capital. We'll go into private real estate. We'll go into hedge funds. Should you even own any of these? Is it worth it? What kind of returns do you get? What are the risks? And so I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can and really give you, from an athlete's perspective, what you need to think about before making any of these investments and how they can help. Once you've have significant wealth, you can possibly allocate and get better returns or better expected returns, I should say, in some of these investments rather than what you can get in the public markets. So, before I talk about that, just seeing the Russell Wilson stuff in the news, just crazy to see that. The possibility of him not being in Seattle. I know obviously he's such a team guy when I played there, and I know firsthand how you need a franchise quarterback, and it really helps. It helps the whole team to have a guy that can win in that place. And if you look at what Brady did leaving New England and going to Tampa, and then you look at what Manning did going to Denver, and I mean, proven winners are hard to find at the quarterback position. So I think Seattle needs him there, and I think it'll get worked out. But man, they gotta get a better protection for him up front. I'm fully on board that. Even when I was there, he took too many hits. And as we dive back into private investments, I just want to kind of just run through them all. First of all, in the public markets, you have stocks and bonds. Stocks are just ownership in companies, whether that's, the big companies like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft. You get to own some of that company by buying stock in it. And then the bond market, these are just loans to these companies, either companies, municipalities, federal government. You're loaning them money and they pay you interest back. And then in the private market, you also have private equity and private debt, private bonds that are really the same. They're just less regulated, and you have to really vet these deals a lot more so than I would say in the public markets. Private investments are really, everyone likes to talk about them in the locker room. They're definitely more sexy than a public market portfolio of owning, good companies and being diversified and all that. So I can see why everyone wants to talk about their private investments, how much they got. It's just a more fun topic, and so you really need to understand where those returns come from. What the risks are associated with those, and then. What matters in hedge funds, what matters in venture capital, what matters in real estate investments, like why are you even allocating money to those versus just owning a public market portfolio? So, and I think the first one is confidence in returns. One thing you want to always be confident when you're investing is are those returns persistent? Meaning, can they be reproduced? Do they consist over time across markets? And then are they pervasive? Throughout time, are they there over and over and over again? And can the same funds, can the same managers reproduce that? And is it not just possibly some luck involved? So you really need to understand the returns and with almost all private investments, they're a lot more complex than public markets, and especially with hedge funds, it's sometimes a black box, they call it, because you don't have any transparency of what's owned in that fund, and so you just really, it's tough to evaluate when you don't know what that fund owns. As far as the risks go, this is where a lot of the return comes from, is the illiquidity and tying up that capital for so many years. And you have to understand that if you allocate to a private equity, a private investment, you might not be getting that capital for 10 plus years. So you have to have enough liquidity, outside of that investment to be able to wait out that kind of return. And so that's a cost that you have to constantly no, because there's that opportunity cost. You could invest it in a more liquid public market portfolio and not had that money tied up for so long for either other opportunities or just the return you get in the public markets. So that's sometimes one that gets missed, and it's definitely should be part of the equation, because you need to have a balanced approach to your wealth, so that you evaluate all those opportunity costs, whether that's in the public or private markets. The other part of the private investments that a lot of people kind of gloss over, they love to pitch returns and how much 2x, 3x you can get on your money, but they're not talking about the 2 and 20 expenses you're going to be paying. So 2 means 2% ongoing management fee, and then 20%, the 20% is of any profits made. So you just have to always really question and be skeptical that is the manager I'm hiring or the money I'm allocating to, are they going to be able to clear that hurdle? I mean, you have to make so much more on your investment to be able to pay those expenses, that it really has to be that good of an investment, and there really has to be a good opportunity there, because that kind of return to justify those fees has to be really, really, really good. And so I just say that there's, and then we'll go into more detail in the hedge fund podcast about whether hedge funds really produce the returns and that they should, or that you should be getting as an investor. And we have a ton of data on that. And then the other thing is, when it comes to other, whether it's, a buddy's deal that you want to invest in, or someone pitches you individually, you got to really understand that that's a private investment deal. That's a private equity deal usually. And I know I've played with guys that did restaurants and they didn't make a lot of money. I mean, the restaurant game is really tough. You have to be really more involved than you think you do. Even being a franchisee can be like that too. So I would say that make sure you do your homework on those type of investments and never personally co-sign for a loan. I know in one instance, someone got sued because they personally co-signed a loan for a restaurant, and if that restaurant goes out of business, then they can come after you for your wealth on that investment. So I really caution when you're doing kind of those one-offs or those investing in friends to as part of the relationship with them, I would just advise you to hire a team of professionals that has expertise in all these areas, so that you can vet each individual deal. I'm not the expert in everything, but you can find the right team that has the experts, and they can get the right information to you, and they can look at a deal and tell you whether it makes sense within your financial structure. Because if you have enough core capital, you got to have the public market portfolio before you should even think about investing in private investments. And then once you get to that level of wealth, you can actually allocate to private investments. Then you need the right eyes looking at a deal to see if it even makes sense for your situation, because most of the times it doesn't. And it's, we'll get into this on the venture capital episode, is what kind of deals you're seeing. There's so many bad deals out there that these venture capital firms, these private equity firms, they pass on so many deals that, the ones that are making it to you, you have to understand that and be humble on this. And, I should have been more humble on this too, is you have to understand that your money is not any different than someone else's, except for maybe a few special areas where they want to work with athletes, so they allow special allocations. There's so much institutional money chasing so many of these deals that you have to understand that you need to vet these deals, because so many people are looking for those deals that you don't want to be the person to accept a lesser deal that everyone else passed on, and it's only coming to you because you're the easy mark. You never want to be the easy mark. Be skeptical. If you don't have the right financial team to analyze these type of things, you need to move on. I mean, if your broker won't look at a financial investment outside of a stock and bond portfolio, and they won't help you in that private investment area, you really need to find a team that will. It's part of owning your wealth. It's part of, really not being taken advantage of. Understand the system is broken for athletes and that you need the right team around you that understands your situations, that's been in your shoes, and they can really help you make a better decision and show you all relevant facts, give you upsides, downsides, make sure it's not some fraud going on. Those are the type of, that's what the wealthy do. And that's what, I can see now that, I have such perspective and want to be able to help, so people aren't taken advantage of, and especially athletes, especially NFL guys. So next week we're going to talk about venture capital, really get into the details of that. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you next week. The information in this podcast is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.